The silent approach. The bridge of the silent whisper hummed with quiet energy as Captain Vexter studied the blue and green planets spinning slowly on his main screen. 3 years they had traveled through the void to reach this remote star system. 3 years of careful planning and preparation for what should be a simple scouting mission. Distance to target planet, Navigator Zilix? Vexter asked, his crystalline fingers tapping against the command chair's smooth surface. 200,000 kilometers and closing, Captain. All stealth systems are running at maximum efficiency. Their primitive detection methods cannot sense our presence. Vexter nodded his elongated head, satisfied. The Zaphirians had perfected the art of invisible observation over centuries of conquest. Their technology was so far beyond most species that they might as well be ghosts watching from another dimension. Scout Commander Kite approached the captain's position, his tall frame moving with careful grace. Initial scans are complete, sir. The planet shows signs of basic industrial development, nuclear technology in its early stages, satellite networks that barely function, radio communications using ancient analog methods. Population estimates? Vexter inquired. Approximately 7 billion individuals concentrated in large settlements. They appear to be divided into numerous competing territories. Our analysts count over 200 separate governmental structures, many in active conflict with neighboring regions. Vexter allowed himself a small smile. A divided species was always easier to conquer. The Zaphirian method was simple and effective: send scouts to study the target world, identify the strongest military powers, wait for them to weaken each other through warfare, then arrive with overwhelming force to claim the planet for the Empire. Any signs of advanced weaponry? Energy shields, plasma cannons, faster-than-light travel? Kite consulted his data pad. None detected, Captain. Their most powerful weapons use chemical explosives and nuclear fission, crude rockets that can barely escape their own gravity. No evidence of defensive orbital platforms or deep space monitoring stations. Perfect. Vexter stood from his chair and walked to the main viewing screen. The planet Earth filled most of the display, its white clouds swirling over blue oceans and brown continents. It looked peaceful from this distance, almost inviting. How long until the main invasion fleet arrives? Admiral Kexter's forces will reach this system in approximately 40 standard cycles, Captain. More than enough time for us to complete reconnaissance and prepare detailed tactical reports. The captain studied the planet's surface more carefully. According to their long-range sensors, the dominant species lived in massive cities connected by primitive transportation networks. They seemed to prefer coastal areas and river valleys for their settlements. Like most developing civilizations, they clustered together for protection and resource sharing. Begin close observation protocols, Vexter ordered. I want detailed analysis of their social structures, communication methods, and defensive capabilities. Focus on the largest population centers first, then expand to rural areas. Should we attempt communication intercepts, Captain? Passive monitoring only. We observe but do not interact. Standard procedure for all reconnaissance missions. As the silent whisper moved closer to Earth's atmosphere, its cloaking systems bent light and energy around the ship's hull. To any human observer, even with their most sensitive instruments, there would be nothing to see. The Zaphirians had perfected invisibility through technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything this primitive world could produce. What Captain Vexter didn't know was that his carefully planned reconnaissance mission was about to encounter something that would change everything the Zaphirians thought they knew about warfare, courage, and the true meaning of strength. First contact. Jake Coleman pulled his Forest Service truck to a stop at the mountain trail entrance and checked his equipment one more time. Radio, first aid kit, emergency flares, and his standard-issue sidearm that he hoped never to use. Another routine patrol in the Colorado wilderness, the kind he had done 1,000 times before. He stepped out of the truck and breathed the clean mountain air. Early morning sunlight filtered through the pine trees, creating patches of gold on the forest floor. Birds called to each other from hidden branches while a gentle breeze carried the smell of wildflowers and fresh earth. 50 meters above him, completely invisible to human eyes, Scout Commander Kite floated in his personal observation pod. The Zaphirian technology allowed him to hover motionless while recording everything Jake did. His equipment translated the human's radio check-in with dispatch, cataloging the simple communication methods these primitive beings used. Fascinating, Kite spoke into his recording device. The subject appears to be conducting some form of territorial patrol. Note the basic projectile weapon and crude communication equipment. Behavioral patterns suggest routine activity rather than response to specific threats. Jake began walking down the mountain trail, his trained eyes scanning for signs of trouble. Broken branches that might indicate someone had gone off the marked path. Trash left behind by careless hikers. Animal tracks that looked unusual or concerning. 20 years as a park ranger had taught him to notice things that others missed. 2 miles ahead on the same trail, Dr. Lisa Parker was setting up her wildlife monitoring equipment near Silver Creek. She had been studying the local bear population for 6 months, tracking their movements and behavior patterns. Her research focused on how grizzly bears adapted to increased human activity in their traditional territory. Another invisible Zaphirian scout, analyst Terwing, observed Lisa from his hidden position. He watched with growing confusion as she deliberately placed herself in an area known to contain dangerous predators. His scanners detected multiple large carnivores within a 5-kilometer radius of her position. Subject behavior appears illogical, Terwing recorded. Female human has positioned herself in territory occupied by apex predators. No visible defensive measures beyond basic communication device. Either this species lacks survival instincts, or these creatures are not actually dangerous. Lisa checked her bear-proof container and camera equipment one more time. She had detected signs of increased bear activity in this area over the past week. Fresh claw marks on trees, disturbed vegetation, and scat samples that indicated at least 2 large males were competing for territory. She found the observation point she had marked on her previous visit and began setting up her camera. If her calculations were correct, this spot would give her a perfect view of the prime fishing area where bears like to catch salmon during the morning hours. Day 7 of observation period, she spoke into her digital recorder. Evidence suggests 2 mature male grizzlies are establishing territorial boundaries. Weather conditions are ideal for extended observation. Beginning watch at 0700 hours. From his hidden position, Terwing struggled to understand what he was seeing. The female human seemed excited about the presence of deadly predators rather than afraid. His translation software must be malfunctioning. No intelligent species would seek out dangerous animals for recreational purposes. Meanwhile, veteran hunter Pete Johnson was tracking through the forest 3 miles to the east. His experienced eyes followed a blood trail that had been bothering him for 2 days. Something large and injured was moving through the area, and injured animals were unpredictable and dangerous. Pete had been hunting these mountains for 30 years. He knew every ridge, every stream, and every animal path. The blood trail belonged to a big grizzly bear, probably wounded in a fight with another bear or possibly hit by a vehicle on the mountain highway. Either way, an injured grizzly near popular hiking trails was a serious problem. The third Zaphirian scout, Observer Nex, followed Pete's progress with growing alarm. His sensors detected the human deliberately tracking a large wounded predator deeper into the wilderness. The predator's bioreadings indicated extreme agitation and pain, making it exceptionally dangerous. Alert: human subject is pursuing injured apex predator into remote terrain, Nex transmitted to his team. Predator shows elevated stress markers and defensive posturing. Recommend immediate human retreat to avoid certain death. But Pete continued following the trail with calm determination, carrying his hunting rifle with practiced ease and moving quietly through the underbrush. His job was not to kill the bear unless absolutely necessary, but to locate it and call in wildlife management if the situation required intervention. The 3 Zaphirian scouts had no idea that their subjects were about to converge on the same location, and that they were about to witness something that would challenge everything they believed about human nature. The encounter. Back at the creek, Lisa noticed fresh tracks in the mud near the water's edge. 2 different sets of bear prints, both from large males. The spacing and depth of the tracks indicated the bears were agitated, possibly preparing for a confrontation. Jake's radio crackled with Lisa's voice requesting a status check. "Jake, I'm seeing some interesting activity near Silver Creek. 2 large grizzlies appear to be moving toward the same fishing spot. Could be territorial behavior." "Copy that, Lisa. I'm about a mile out from your position. Any signs of hikers in the area?" "Negative on hikers, but I'm picking up some unusual disturbances in the vegetation. Something big has been moving through here recently." Above them, the 3 Zaphirian scouts exchanged confused communications. Their subjects were deliberately moving toward danger instead of away from it. This violated every principle of survival behavior they had observed in dozens of other species. Pete emerged from a thick stand of aspen trees just as a deep, rumbling growl echoed through the forest. The wounded grizzly he had been tracking stood 50 yards ahead, its massive shoulders hunched with pain and rage. Fresh blood matted the fur on its left flank, and its small eyes burned with the unpredictable fury of an injured animal. Observer necks watched in fascination as Pete slowly raised his rifle, not in a threatening manner, but in a ready position. The human's heart rate was elevated but controlled. No signs of panic or irrational fear response. "Interesting," Nex recorded. "Subject maintains tactical awareness despite proximity to extreme danger. Weapon positioning suggests defensive rather than aggressive intent." The wounded bear caught Pete's scent and turned toward him with a threatening huff. Pete stood his ground, speaking in low, calm tones. "Easy there, big fellow. Nobody wants trouble here." A quarter-mile downstream, Lisa's cameras captured the approach of 2 massive male grizzlies moving toward the fishing area. The larger of the 2, easily 800 pounds, was the dominant male she had been tracking for weeks. The second bear was younger but still formidable, probably challenging for territory rights. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered into her recorder. "Alpha male approaching from the north, challenger from the east. Classic territorial dispute about to unfold." Analyst Terwing could barely process what he was seeing. The female human was positioning herself to observe a battle between apex predators. Her excitement levels were off the charts, but not from fear, from scientific curiosity. Jake heard the confrontation before he saw it. The sound of 2 giant bears colliding echoed through the forest like a small avalanche. He quickened his pace, knowing that Lisa was somewhere near the action. The 2 bears rose on their hind legs, each standing nearly 9 feet tall, and crashed together with bone-jarring force. Claws raked across thick fur and hide as they grappled for dominance. The younger challenger was faster, but the alpha had experience and raw power. From her concealed position, Lisa filmed everything, her hands steady despite the incredible violence unfolding just yards away. This was the kind of behavior documentation that could revolutionize understanding of grizzly social dynamics. Scout Commander Kite had moved his observation pod closer to get better readings on the conflict. His scanners indicated that each bear possessed enough physical power to easily kill multiple humans, yet the female continued her observations without any apparent concern for her safety. The battle between the grizzlies was reaching its climax when Pete's wounded bear suddenly charged toward the sound of the fight. The injured animal saw the territorial dispute as either a threat to avoid or an opportunity to scavenge, but its pain-addled brain chose aggression. Pete realized immediately that 3 bears in one area created an incredibly dangerous situation. He keyed his radio. "Jake, Lisa, we've got a problem. Wounded male heading toward your position from the southwest. You need to clear the area now." But before anyone could respond, the injured bear burst into the clearing where the 2 males were still locked in combat. The sudden appearance of a third bear changed everything. The alpha and challenger immediately stopped fighting and turned their attention to the newcomer, their territorial dispute forgotten in the face of a new threat. Jake arrived at Lisa's position just as all three bears began to circle each other in a deadly dance of dominance and survival. He grabbed Lisa's arm. "We need to go. Now." But Lisa shook her head, her eyes wide with scientific fascination. "Jake, this is unprecedented. 3 adult males in direct confrontation. This has never been documented before." Above them, the 3 Zaphirian scouts watched in disbelief as the humans remained in position despite being surrounded by creatures that could kill them instantly. Their behavior defied every logical survival instinct. What happened next would change everything the aliens thought they knew about the species they had come to conquer. True courage revealed. The wounded bear's arrival triggered chaos. All 3 grizzlies began roaring simultaneously, a sound that shook the very ground beneath them. The injured animal, driven by pain and confusion, lashed out at both the alpha and the challenger. In seconds, what had been a structured territorial dispute became a 3-way battle for survival. Pete arrived at the clearing just as the violence escalated beyond anything he had seen in 30 years of hunting. The wounded bear, bleeding heavily from its flank, had turned the organized confrontation into pure savagery. All 3 animals were now fighting not for territory, but for their lives. "Lisa, Jake." Pete shouted over the din, "The wounded one is driving them into a frenzy. They'll kill anything that moves now." Above them, the Zaphirian scouts watched in fascination as the 3 humans positioned themselves in a defensive triangle around Lisa's equipment. Instead of fleeing from overwhelming danger, they had chosen to stand their ground and protect each other. Scout Commander Kite transmitted urgent data back to the Silent Whisper. "Captain, the humans are exhibiting behavior patterns unlike anything in our database. They are voluntarily placing themselves in extreme danger to protect pack members. This level of self-sacrifice is unprecedented." On the ship's bridge, Captain Vexter studied the incoming reports with growing confusion. "Explain, Commander. Are they simply too primitive to recognize the threat?" "Negative, sir. All subjects show elevated stress indicators consistent with full awareness of danger. Heart rates, adrenaline levels, and brain activity all indicate they understand they could die. Yet they remain in position." The largest grizzly, the 800-pound alpha, suddenly broke away from the 3-way fight and charged directly toward the humans. Its massive paws thundered against the ground as it covered the distance in seconds. Jake stepped forward, placing himself between the charging bear and Lisa. He raised his sidearm, knowing that the small-caliber weapon would likely only anger the massive predator, but prepared to use it anyway. "Get down," he shouted, but Lisa refused to move from her camera position. "I'm not leaving the documentation," she called back. "This behavior has never been recorded." Pete flanked the charging bear from the side, his hunting rifle trained on the animal's center mass. He had a clear shot that could drop the grizzly instantly, but he hesitated. The bear wasn't evil, it was just being a bear, protecting what it saw as its territory. Observer Nex could barely process the readings from his sensors. The human male called Pete had the capability to eliminate the threat with his projectile weapon, yet he was restraining himself. The female called Lisa was prioritizing data collection over personal survival. The male called Jake was positioning himself to take the full brunt of an attack that would certainly kill him. "This is impossible," Nex transmitted. "The subjects are exhibiting tactical decision-making that prioritizes group survival and mission completion over individual preservation. No species we have encountered displays this level of organized self-sacrifice." The charging grizzly was 10 feet away when something extraordinary happened. Pete's wounded bear, the one that had started the entire conflict, suddenly intercepted the alpha's charge. The 2 massive animals collided in mid-air, rolling across the forest floor in a tangle of claws and fangs. The impact gave Jake the opening he needed. Instead of shooting, he grabbed Lisa and pulled her behind a large boulder, finally getting her to safety. Pete maintained his position, rifle ready, watching for any sign that the bears might turn their attention back to the humans. Analyst Terwing was recording everything, his sophisticated equipment capturing biometric data that defied explanation. The injured bear's interference appears to have been protective. It diverted the Alpha's attack away from the human subjects. This suggests complex reasoning and possibly altruistic behavior from a non-sentient species. The three bears continued their battle, but the dynamics had shifted. The wounded animal's intervention had confused the other two. The Alpha and Challenger began to separate, their territorial dispute forgotten in the chaos. The injured bear, having expended its last reserves of strength, limped away into the deeper forest. Gradually, the forest began to quiet. The Challenger, realizing he was outmatched, retreated toward the eastern ridge. The Alpha, bloodied but victorious, claimed the fishing area and settled down to tend his wounds. Lisa emerged from behind the boulder, her camera still running. "Did you see that? The wounded bear actually protected us. It saw the Alpha as the bigger threat and chose to engage it instead of us." Pete lowered his rifle, amazement clear in his voice. "In 30 years, I've never seen anything like that. That bear should have been focused on its own survival, not ours." Jake keyed his radio to report the incident to dispatch, but his voice was shaking with adrenaline. "Base, this is Ranger Coleman. We've had an unusual wildlife encounter near Silver Creek. Situation is stable, no injuries, but we're going to need a wildlife management team out here to assess the wounded bear." Above them, the three Zaphirian scouts exchanged data that would soon reach Captain Vexter on the Silent Whisper. For the first time in their species' history of conquest, they had encountered something that challenged their fundamental understanding of intelligence, courage, and the bonds that could exist between different species. The reconnaissance mission was about to become something entirely different. The retreat. Captain Vexter stood before the main viewing screen on the Silent Whisper, studying the data streams from his three scouts. The reports made no sense according to everything the Zaphirians knew about species behavior and survival instincts. "Commander Kite, return to the ship immediately. All scouts, return to the ship. Captain, our reconnaissance is incomplete. We have only observed a small sample of. Return now." "That is an order." As the three observation pods lifted silently from the Colorado wilderness, Jake, Lisa, and Pete continued their work below, completely unaware that they had just participated in one of the most significant encounters in galactic history. Lisa was reviewing her footage, her scientific mind racing with the implications of what she had recorded. "This changes everything we know about bear behavior. The wounded animal's protective response, the way the Alpha responded to our presence without immediate aggression, it suggests a level of environmental awareness we never suspected." Pete was tracking the wounded bear's trail, following drops of blood that led deeper into the forest. "That animal saved our lives. I don't know how or why, but it deliberately put itself between that Alpha and us." Jake coordinated with the wildlife management team via radio, ensuring that the wounded bear would receive proper medical attention. "We need a tranquilizer team at these coordinates. Large male grizzly, approximately 600 pounds, injured but mobile. Approach with extreme caution." On the bridge of the Silent Whisper, the three scouts presented their findings to Captain Vexter and the senior staff. The data painted a picture that challenged everything the Zaphirians believed about conquest and civilization. The human subjects consistently chose group survival over individual preservation, Scout Commander Kite reported. They willingly remained in lethal danger to protect each other and complete their mission objectives. More significantly, analyst Turwing added, the planet's apex predators demonstrated protective behavior toward the humans. This suggests a level of interspecies cooperation that we have never encountered. Observer next pulled up bio readings on the main screen. "Captain, the stress indicators show that all human subjects were fully aware they could die, yet none of them fled. They maintained tactical positioning and mutual support throughout the encounter." Captain Vexter studied the data for long minutes, his crystalline features reflecting the glow of the screens. Finally, he spoke. "In 17 successful reconnaissance missions, I have never encountered a species like this. They are not advanced enough to pose a technological threat, yet. Yet they display courage that exceeds our own, Commander Kite finished quietly. The bridge fell silent as the implications settled over the crew. The Zaphirian Empire had conquered dozens of worlds, always finding species that either surrendered quickly or fought with predictable self-preservation instincts. They had never encountered beings who would sacrifice themselves for others without question, or planets where different species would protect each other. Navigator Zilix, set course away from this system, Captain Vexter ordered. Maximum speed. Sir. Our orders were to complete reconnaissance and prepare for Admiral Kexter's arrival in 40 standard cycles. Orders change. Send a priority transmission to Admiral Kexter. Tell him that this world is unsuitable for conquest. Unsuitable, sir. The humans have no defenses that could threaten our fleet. Captain Vexter turned to face his crew, his expression grave. They have something far more dangerous than weapons, Commander. They have courage that turns apex predators into allies. They have bonds that make them willing to die for strangers. They have a spirit that could inspire our own people to question why we conquer instead of cooperate. The silent whisper began its acceleration away from Earth, its cloaking systems hiding the ship from human detection one final time. As the blue and green planet shrank on the viewing screen, Captain Vexter made a decision that would ripple across the Zaphirian Empire. Delete all records of this reconnaissance mission, he ordered. As far as the Empire is concerned, this system contains no habitable worlds. Down in the Colorado wilderness, Jake Coleman filed his incident report, Dr. Lisa Parker uploaded her research data, and Pete Johnson guided the wildlife management team to the wounded bear's location. None of them would ever know that their actions had just saved their planet from invasion. The wounded grizzly was successfully tranquilized and transported to a wildlife rehabilitation center, where veterinarians discovered that its injuries had been sustained protecting a smaller female bear from a mountain lion attack. Even among Earth's predators, courage and sacrifice were more common than the galaxy had realized. Months later, Admiral Kexter's invasion fleet arrived at the coordinates Captain Vexter had provided, only to find empty space. The Silent Whispers report claimed the system had been misidentified, containing only gas giants and lifeless rocks. The Admiral never learned that just a few light-years away, a small blue planet continued its orbit around a yellow star, its inhabitants unaware that they had won the most important battle in their species' history without ever knowing they were at war. In the Colorado wilderness, the bears returned to their territories, the forest rangers continued their patrols, and the researchers pursued their studies. Life went on as it always had, protected by courage that had proven stronger than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. The end.